Hello and welcome to the NFU Shed Talks podcast. I'm Luke Cox.
And I'm Bizza Walters.
And coming up in today's pod.
As the new livestock worrying laws come into force after years of NFU campaigning, we speak to Cornwall sheep farmer William, whose flock was decimated in a dog attack.
Just saw this scene of carnage, so all we had to do was go and try and rescue what was left, which meant catching lambs without mothers, trying to get the sheep together because they were spread out all over the place.
Our Westminster team look ahead to the King's speech and what it will mean for British farming.
The one thing I've said when I've been arguing this case is that farmers are confident in their product, they know that it's good, and they're not allergic to competition, but don't tie their hands behind their backs. We're not asking for protection, we're just asking for fairness and the level playing field. So that was basically what the event was asking for.
Plus, we speak to British bedmaker Harry, who is backing British farmers by using traceable British wool in all their mattresses.
The 7-year rule didn't exist 20 years ago. In my personal opinion, is a way to coach future sales. It's a way to create product with a certain lifespan because the consumer is, even at the point of purchase, the consumer is preparing for their next purchase.
Before we get started, Bizza, last time we were together was at NFU conference, which was great fun.
Oh, it was fantastic, Luke. And we were both very busy interviewing various different guests, which you can hear on one of the previous episodes of the podcast. However, we were all slightly worried on the first day when you didn't arrive. And obviously you were waiting for the newest arrival of your family. And I know that some of the team were getting a bit panicked when you didn't turn up, but you did eventually. So tell us what's been happening in your world.
Yes, I did make it to Birmingham. I blame the one-way streets and the roadworks for my delayed arrival. So apologies for the panic caused. But yes, no baby arriving whilst I was at conference. But a few days later, on the 1st of March, yes, our daughter Charlotte arrived. We are now parents.
Oh, huge congratulations to you both. And how is, parenthood going for you both? Is she behaving? Is she sleeping?
She is not sleeping. There is no routine to life anymore. There is no sleep, but it's all part of parenthood. It's all good fun. She's doing very well.
Oh, and you're glowing with it, Luke. Being a girl dad really suits you.
Very complimentary of you, Bizza. It's a good job there's no video on these podcasts to prove otherwise. But what have you been up to since conference?
We've been lambing, so not done much else other than that, really. So a bit like you, bringing new life into the world, but very different. So we've, finished doing my little flock at the beginning of March, and then we're nearly finished the main commercial flock. So we've done about 450 in total. And the weather's improved, which has been very welcome.
Busy time of year, and you've been doing it in your new shed that you have built this year?
Yes, we, my sisters and I bought a very small piece of land that neighbours the farm, and it had a shed on it. So we repaired that, what Angus did. Got a solar system put on as well because there's no electric, which meant I could have a camera there and watch everything from bed or wherever I'm out and about, do night checks. And yeah, it's been fantastic. So feeling very lucky.
And there's also been some big news in the wider farming world. So the NFU president, Tom Bradshaw, sat on the first Farming and Food Partnership Board, which came as a result of Minette Battis's review of the farming sector and the profitability of the farming sector. And this is a board that's going to help drive farm productivity and profitability going forward. And they had their first meeting, which I think went well. And I think Tom reflects on it in his weekly vlog. So if people want to have a quick listen to that, they can learn a bit more about it.
Well, it's been lovely to catch up, Luke, but I think we should now get on with the pod. Our first guest was a gentleman called William Dawe, and he's a farmer down in Devon who was victim to a horrendous dog attack on some of his ewes and lambs back in 2024. We spoke to William because the new livestock worrying laws have come into force this March. William, thanks for joining us. Can you just start off by telling us about your farm and the different enterprises you have there?
Yeah, thank you, Bizza. Yes, we're a family farm. I've got 2 sons that work with me, and my wife's a partner as well. We've built up a herd of 200 dairy cows at the moment. We just build up to that. We've still got what we call a legacy settler herd, 25 South Devon and a few Aberdeen Angus. And we have a flock of 185 breeding ewes, including a small flock of grey-faced Dartmoor rare breed traditional sheep. And we do a little bit of cropping, so we're very mixed, really.
William, it's great to hear you have Dartmoors because I have a really small flock of them here as well, and they're such lovely sheep. Can you just talk us through what happened on your farm in 2024 and what you discovered that morning when you woke up and went out to check on your ewes and lambs?
Yes, well, it was my eldest son, Christopher, who discovered it. He went out, we'd lambed our early lambers in January, and 2 days after we turned them away, 3 or 4 fields away, he went out to see them 6:30 in the morning, and was just saw this scene of carnage. It really was awful. And he came back. He could hardly believe what he'd seen, but he phoned a neighbour and tried to get a hold of the police immediately. Came back in, and we all agreed on the plan. We just go and we tried to get through to the police. It took a while, but we did eventually. And we all went, the 3 of us, to try and sort things out. Because what they saw was probably about 20 dead ewes, 25, maybe less, 25 lambs spread all over the place, and quite a few ewes that were in such a bad state. I really can't think about it now, to be honest. But they took recordings of them. The way they were killed was absolutely horrendous. So we just set about, luckily that morning we had a girl who was milking for us. Remember, this is right in the depths of winter. The weather was bad, the calving, lambing. We needed nothing else to do that day, but this situation just completely took over. So all we had to do was go and try and rescue what was left, which meant catching lambs without mothers, trying to get the sheep together because they were spread out all over the place. There were sheep in a big ditch. There were sheep on top of hedges, caught up in barbed wire. We got a vet as soon as we could because obviously we had to try and euthanize some of the sheep, and some of them we tried to, the vet stitched up. Eventually, all but one had to be put down, unfortunately. But we did our best for all of them. But it just took over our farming situation for days because we had all these orphan lambs. There's nothing matched up. You'd have a dead ewe with a double, or else you'd have dead lambs of another ewe. And I just had to, it's a bit gruesome really, but I had to just skin lambs and adopt things across to try and make it couples. It was just a horrendous situation. We were then left with a lot of tame lambs, which that's a lot of work in itself. So yeah, it's just a very difficult situation, which none of us want to go through again. I don't think anybody who's not been through it would realise the burden it is and just the sheer amount of work that is involved in clearing up a mess like that.
And it's hideous to find. I mean, we've had a dog attack here years ago, a bit like you, going out to check sheep and you just see a dog. Well, we actually saw it happen, which I'm not sure if that's even worse or not. But no, it's horrible and you wouldn't wish it upon anyone, would you?
I think the saddest part was that we realised afterwards that it happened during the night. We gathered quite a bit of evidence that somebody was out shooting foxes, actually, but that's another story. If it was really fresh, I think the situation probably been different. The dogs that were pursued probably would have had more DNA evidence on them, and there might have been a conviction back then. But the trail had gone a bit cold, although it was quite obvious from tracks and where the sheep had gone to and history sort of thing, what had happened. But dealing with it fresh like that, the fact that the sheep had been like it for part of the night, I think was the hardest thing.
It's a really horrific situation you're describing, William, and it's an incredibly challenging time for you and the farming business. You talked about one of the key things you had to do at the very start was to make a plan and I guess try and keep as clear ahead as you possibly could as to what you practically needed to get in place in terms of calling the police, calling the vets out. I guess that plan was quite integral to you getting things starting to get sorted and back on track.
Yeah, and that plan at the time was the right one. I mean, to get a conviction and if we'd handled things differently, didn't regard the sheep as the primary thing that we had to deal with, I think things might have been slightly different. But our focus was entirely on getting sheep sorted, getting lambs with mothers, trying to mend the sheep that were so badly damaged. And we did the right thing for the animals and kept the rest of the farm running. But if we'd had any spare time, I think we probably would have tackled it in a slightly different way. But there was no spare time. So we did what we did for the animals, and that's what we do.
And that's always going to be your number one priority in that situation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Luckily, the police did come quite promptly, and they called another officer, and they really did their best to the community officer came. Dartmoor protection officer, Carla, she was involved immediately. She was tremendous, lot of support to us, and had an amazing amount of information for the police, which they shared, which is really good. So between them, they got the situation under control to try to pursue where the dogs had come from and stop them doing any other attack. The vet was good. Well, he was obviously under severe stress. It was a terrible situation. But everybody worked really well together and we got it sorted.
And that support must have been really important, because the impact on you and your family as you processed what had happened and started to get the farm back on track must have been really challenging for you.
It was, and it's still with it.
I saw in an article when I was just reading up before we spoke to you that they took evidence in the dog footprints that you saw around the farm, and they were big, weren't they? This wasn't either one dog or small dogs that were doing this.
They reckon it was a pair of Rottweilers. We took the casts of the prints, and they had them sort of identified the breed. The police at that time, it was a very new sort of thing to deal with, and the DNA was just coming in, the DNA testing. So the vet took instruction from the police scientist, and we told him how to take the DNA samples, and he did a very good job under the circumstance with rain and blood and mud everywhere, and he managed to get dog DNA off a few sheep, which was a good start. So obviously they knew they were dealing with dogs for a start. What they couldn't do at the time, and I think they probably can now, there's been a lot more advancement, was identify which particular dog, because they did swab 2 dogs locally and they got DNA off them. But if they could have matched, obviously they could have identified which particular dogs, because down the line, our main concern a few months and even a year later was those dogs have never been actually identified. Those dogs could do the same again.
And examples like this, which we hear across the country, are part of the reason why we have a new amendment now to the Dogs Livestock Protection Act. And that's given the police more powers, including taking these DNA samples that you referenced there, William. I think they can also take mouth impressions of dogs now to really try and identify exactly which dogs have caused these problems. And if they do identify dogs, they can now detain them and make the offenders, the owners, pay for all the costs of seizing, capturing, and all these tests as well. Do you think this is going to make a difference to incidents like this in the future?
I'm sure it would have made a difference in our instance, because dogs that the police suspected, and there have been 2 dogs, they put a control order on them after a while. So I don't think they're ever going to get let out again. If they could have seized those dogs immediately, it might have ended up differently, wasn't it? And if those dogs had been seized, and with the increased powers, if the police thought they would be too much of a risk, I would have hoped they would have been put down, whether they'd done it or no. I mean, it's too much of a risk. Animals like that should not be around, never. People wouldn't like to hear this, but dogs are animals. If you put a dog down, even if it's the wrong one, at least you tried to reduce the risk. But there's so many attacks on people nowadays, it's terrible. So we've just got to try and reduce those risks.
It's such a hard one, isn't it? Because we as farmers, well, most of us, I would think, are dog people. We need dogs, especially sheep and cattle farmers for, rounding sheep up or bringing cattle in. We need dogs, and we've got 7 here. They're part of the family. And when we had the dog attack here, we did take, we were about to take measures to dispatch of the dog, and it was a neighbour's dog, and it's the last thing we wanted to do. But when you see it ripping through your business and your animals, you actually have no choice but to do that. But we didn't want to do it. In the end, we managed to get the dog out, but a lot of damage had been done, and this dog was sent away for training, and touch wood, we've not had any problems since. But do you think these measures that have now come into place, as Luke mentioned, do you think they go far enough?
Well, I don't know the history of all the legislation. I mean, there's a lot behind it, but be able to seize the dogs and take them immediately away is a good start, isn't it? Unlimited fines, I mean, that's a bigger penalty. That's good. And with that combined with all the DNA processing and sort of refining that process, which we sort of know about because the police were very good. They came here for a training session several months after because they have got these more accurate DNA tests now. and they've got different ways of capturing the DNA from the sheep, and this is partly what they did to be able to capture more DNA. Because the more you get, the more you're more likely to identify the particular dog. So everything put together, I think, is a really good help. Yeah.
It must have had a huge impact on you, William, financially, but also, I don't know about you, but when we witnessed what we saw on our farm, the last thing you think about is the money, because you want to make sure that these sheep are, well, they can get through it really, and their welfare, as always, is our number one top priority. But after everything had kind of settled down and you'd realised what had happened and started counting numbers of deaths, and I think it was over 50, was it not, or about 50, which for someone with 185 breeding ewes is quite a big number. It's nearly a quarter of your flock, really. So how did it affect you, both mentally and financially?
Well, mentally, we sort of got over it now, but it's still with us. But it took months and months for it to die away. I mean, we're not really sensitive people. We just get on with things. But we were all very touchy for a while and argumentative, and it was just this thing in the background all the time. It did weaken us for a while, I must admit. You're just seeing those scenes in your head. I saw the boys. Luckily, they photographed it and they filmed it. They filmed the video of the poor sheep trying to get down from hedges and things. And they posted it on Facebook for local people to see. One son didn't want to do it. He thought it was too gruesome. Another said, yes, we've got to do it. Stop another dog attack. I think it was the right thing to do. And the information we got back was quite surprising. People were really horrified what they saw. But it was the right thing to do, and it shocked a lot of people. But we took months to get over it, and we're still not quite over it now, to be honest.
And financially, what impact did it have on your business? Because you've got to replace these breeding ewes. You've lost lambs, which, are part of your income.
Well, didn't think about that for a while. Didn't deal with insurance. I rang up the insurance right away. I knew we recovered. Didn't deal with that for weeks. We're too busy. But financially, they valued the sheep okay, and they paid one or two of the costs, like disposal costs, vet costs, things like that. But the consequential losses were quite substantial, dealing with all those tame lambs and the labour requirement. And we had to hire an extra person in. Luckily, we could get hold of that time of the year. So, yeah, it did cost us, I don't know, really, probably 2,000 or 3,000 uninsured costs, I would have thought, to get through it. Then I wanted to buy more sheep right away, which we did eventually. Bought some couples. My sons didn't want to right away because we didn't know the dogs hadn't been identified. There's always the risk that the damn things are going to come back, isn't there? But after a while, we bit the bullet and bought some couples. And yeah, the livestock number, you can always buy sheep. That's the least of your problem. The main problem is just the emotional side of it, to be honest. Just trying to deal with things and process it and getting on with things and getting back to work and dealing with everything. It is hard, but like I say, we're quite tough people. We managed it. Some people would have buffered under, I think, with all the other work that was going on here that time of the year. It was just almost overwhelming, really.
So, William, it's been a couple of years since the dog attacks. How's the farm looking today?
Farm's looking good, yeah. We're getting into better time of the year now. All the lot, we've nearly finished lambing. Lambing's gone really well. No sign of blue tongue, thankfully, but we did vaccinate against it. Calving is sort of halfway through, and the cows are milking well. There's lots of grass around. It's been a really kind winter. It's been a hard winter from the rain point of view, but it's been mild. There's lots of grass around. I think we're probably going to be harvesting early. We're even looking ahead to that now. So, yeah, things are looking well. Livestock are healthy, and we're getting your cattle out. So, yeah, everything's positive. Thank you.
Very limited positive to take from a story like this, but I think it's really good to hear how well the likes of the police and the vets responded to you and supported you. And hopefully when we've got these, with this new powers in place as well, it will be a good combination of great relationships from the professionals and the experts that you need to work with in situations like this, and the power behind them that will hopefully mean that situations like this happen much less frequently, and when they do happen, they're dealt with better. I guess as we come to the end of our interview, it'd be good to understand if you have any messages for other livestock farmers or dog owners about sheep worrying and the impacts it can have.
The primary one is tell all your neighbours and anybody of any attack or any dog worrying of any kind, because large sort of farmers around here, mostly lowland farmers, and I don't think a lot of them realised how serious a problem it was. But soon I spoke to my colleagues on the moor, and I was very grateful. I had phone calls from some of them. They're very understanding. They go through this on a weekly or even a daily basis on this side of Dalton, or at least on the commons. They have small attacks and dog worrying all the time. But they do tell each other, and they're always on the lookout for it. But I've also spoken to other people, mostly lowland farmers, who they just put up with it and think, oh, well, a couple of sheep have been killed, a couple of lambs have been lost, just put up with it. They're not insured even for it. But if there's any dog worrying or any incidents or stray dogs even, just tell your neighbours, try and get that information out there and keep a watch on them, because you don't know when it's going to crop up. And when it does, it's just so horrendous. You really don't want to see it again.
Well, that's some very sound advice, William. Thank you for sharing it. And I suppose apologies we've had you on this podcast in such awful circumstances. And I hope that you never have to experience this again, because it really is the worst. So yeah, wishing you all the best and some happy, healthy ewes and lambs, I hope. And thank you ever so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Bizza. Thank you, Luke.
Bizza, farming can be challenging at the best of times, and William's experience is really difficult to hear, isn't it?
It's really hard, Luke. And I think what's so sad is that so many sheep farmers or even livestock farmers in general have probably experienced something like this. So I know we have at home, and I know only too well what it feels like and actually mentally how it affects you. And he said to us afterwards, didn't he, as we just finished recording, that he wouldn't have been able to do that interview 12 months ago. And it's been 2 years since that attack. So 2 years later, and they're still mentally finding it really challenging, because I don't think anyone wants to go through that. And no one definitely wants to go through it again when they've experienced it.
No, the impacts are long lasting. And like every other farmer, on top of that, he's contending with other challenges that the farming sector have to face. We've got high inflation at the moment. We've got the conflict in Iran, which is inflating key inputs like fertiliser and fuel. And all of this will be adding to the likes of William's burden for running his farm business. And to talk about our latest events in Parliament, our Westminster team are now here to speak to us.
Hello everyone, it's Scott Pepe here, Head of External Affairs at the NFU.
And Rory, the NFU's External Affairs Manager.
And this week we'll be talking about some of the great events we've been running in and around Westminster.
And after that, we will be giving everyone an insight into what we expect will be happening over the next coming weeks.
Including the King's Speech, which is a very important day for us in the team and for the NFU more widely. Before we get on to that, though, I thought I would just touch on Iran. I know that the Iran conflict is causing our members lots of worry, whether that's fuel or fertiliser prices or energy prices as well. And the NFU has been absolutely at the forefront this week in raising some of those concerns. Tom met Dame Angela Eagle on Monday to update her about the impact the Iran conflict is having on our members, and he was in front of the Secretary of State again on Wednesday to do the same. And our real asks around the Iran conflict are things I think our members would expect us to ask. That's not going ahead with the standing charges increases that are due in April. Same with the FSA charges as well, asking the government to put those on ice at such an inflationary period, as well as campaigning for more transparency in the fertiliser market. If you want to see more about what the NFU is doing to lessen the impact of the Iran conflict on members, then do go to NFU Online. There's lots of stuff about what we're asking for. Levers the government can pull to make life easier for you, our members.
And Scott, obviously when you're saying Tom, you're talking about President Tom Bradshaw.
Yes, I'm sorry everyone, first name terms. Tom Bradshaw, President of the NFU, has had lots of meetings this week, as actually have all our other office holders. Now, Rory, we said we were going to talk about some events. One of the really important things that the External Affairs team does is run events in Westminster. We want MPs every week to have some form of NFU event they can go to. Now, sometimes that's our big events like Back British Farming Day or our summer reception, and sometimes that's smaller events like drop-in briefings ahead of debates in Parliament. And Rory, you ran a really important event last week on the subject of trade.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So apparently I'm a bit of a glutton for punishment because I organised 2 events on the same day last Wednesday, but the first one was on core standards. And I mean, we talk about core standards, we know what it is, but what it means is that any item that is imported, food item that is imported into the United Kingdom, it would meet the same animal welfare and environmental protection standards that farmers in the United Kingdom legally have to abide by. And we did the event with two other organisations, so the RSPCA and the WWF. And I know we're not necessarily the most natural of bedfellows, but we on this ask on core standards, we are very much aligned, and so we've been working together to push this ask.
I think that's a really good point, Rory, and we don't agree with all organisations on everything, and clearly that's the case with the RSPCA and the WWF. But when we can agree with organisations, even if we don't agree on everything, then it really does help to demonstrate to MPs that there is widespread support. When an MP says that NFU, the WWF and the RSPCA are agreeing on something, that tends to capture their attention.
Yeah, and I think it piqued some curiosity as well. So I did have one member of Parliament who came and he said, "I thought you hated each other. I've just come to see if you're fighting." Which, I mean, if we're having a brawl in Dining Room A of the House of Commons, I think that's just a bit gauche. But we were doing this event together, and it is an important issue for farmers, and it gets raised all the time whenever I'm speaking to them at AGMs and such. But roughly about 40% of the food that we eat in the United Kingdom is imported, and currently none of them are required to meet the standard, this base level of standards that, like I said, our farmers are required to meet. And it's become a bit more of an issue since Brexit, because the government's now got responsibility for competencies that the European Union had. So they've got, for example, full control of trade and then environmental protections. But there's been a bit of a divergence. So DBT, the Department for Business and Trade, have been pursuing trade liberalisation, whereas DEFRA have been, putting forward more ambitious environmental standards. And so farmers are getting pulled apart from both sides, and they're just being forced to compete with these products that legally they can't actually use the same production standards. And I mean, one example, and I always trip over this this acronym, but it's the CPTPP countries. They are allowed to bring in, say, pork products, like a certain amount of pork products, tariff-free, that have been produced using soy stalls. Or you will have eggs that have been laid by hens in battery cages. These production methods are obviously not legal in the United Kingdom. Or conversely, you might have crops that have been sprayed with neonicotinoids that farmers don't have permission to use in the United Kingdom. So it's not just theoretical. We know that these are coming in. And the one thing I've said when I've been arguing this case is that farmers are confident in their product. They know that it's good, and they're not allergic to competition, but don't tie their hands behind their backs. We're not asking for protection. We're just asking for fairness and a level playing field. So that was basically what the event was asking for.
No, that's really good. And as you say, it's about fairness. If the government thinks that a product should be illegal to produce here, then the government should think it should be illegal to import products to produce to those standards as well.
We had representatives from all four of the constituent nations of the United Kingdom. It was great. And there was just shy of 50 MPs, or some of them sent representatives from their office. So it was a good turnout. And obviously we had peers on top of that. But no, so we're very happy with it.
And then later on in the day, Rory, you had a roundtable on rural police funding. Again, another issue that is really important to members. We're seeing more and more rural crime. Again, when we go out to speak to members, that is one of the top issues. What do we need to happen to the police funding formula?
For this one, we brought in rural crime, or stakeholders that are involved in rural crime from across England. And it was largely police and crime commissioners, but we also had people from the Rural Services Network and the National Rural Crime Unit.
And so that roundtable was all about getting the key people to push the Home Office to ensure that rural areas get the fair amount of funding that they need and deserve compared to urban areas, because we know that in rural areas there are challenges with policing, but at the moment the Home Office funding formula prioritises urban areas. And again, much like core standards, we are simply asking for fairness to ensure that per head those living in rural areas get the same amount of funding. So it was a really good opportunity to get those stakeholders together, and we will continue to put pressure on the Home Office to update that formula to reflect the needs of policing in rural areas.
So, Scott, you mentioned at the beginning of this recording session the King's Speech. Tell us a bit about that. What is it?
So the King's Speech is a really important day, both for Parliament, but also for us in the External Affairs team. The King reads out the 20 or so pieces of legislation that the government plan to introduce in the next parliamentary session. A parliamentary session is about 12 to 18 months. So on that day, we will get a sense, or at least the titles at least, of bills that the government want to bring in. So we know that they are probably going to want to bring in a bill to do with SBS and the EU reset, and we're expecting as well perhaps a bill on planning. But on that day, it is all hands to the pump in Westminster. As soon as we get any sense of legislation the government might be intending to bring in, we are on the phone to MPs and ministers, and our policy colleagues in HQ are on the phone to their officials in the civil service. If there are any piece of legislation that might touch our members, we want to know about it and start to influence it early.
So that was obviously what will be happening on the day. Before that, we will be getting in touch with the government just to say, look, we would quite like some bills introduced in the next parliamentary session on waste crime, which is something else that might be coming up. So the government made an announcement, it was probably about 2 weeks ago now, and they said they were going to be giving the Environment Agency more powers. That would require legislation. So we'd quite like that to come in. And we will be doing a bit of lobbying just to make sure that when the speech is being drafted, NFU members' voices are front and centre.
So Rory, I think that's you done for events for a week or two at least. We're going to get on with lobbying on the King's Speech, as well as, of course, Iran is very much the only game in town in Westminster, ensuring that ministers are fully aware of the pressure our members are under. So until next time, thank you for listening and goodbye.
A lot going on in Westminster, and it's great to hear how the King's Speech will have an effect on the NFU's lobbying efforts this year. Now for something a little bit different. We had a chat with a bed maker, and we're going from shed talks to bed talks, which, Luke, I think in your current state is something that you need to know a bit more about.
I think at the moment, Bizza, if you gave me a plank of wood, I'd fall fast asleep on it. But when I do finally get some sleep, a comfy mattress is fairly important.
And we all know for a good night's sleep, Luke, other than you, that something like British wool filled inside your mattress is going to drift you off into a nice sleep. So let's hear from Harry about how they're using British wool in their mattresses.
We're joined now by Harry Thompson. He's the head of brand development and marketing for the Iron and Brass Bed Company. Harry, tell us a bit about your business.
Where to begin? We're quite unique in the fact that we are a family company. You see some companies and they say, oh, we're a family company, but actually the family sits on the board of directors and don't get involved in the day-to-day. You've already mentioned my job title, so I'm very much involved in the day-to-day. Brother Jack, he's head of manufacturing and production, and then Amanda and Stephen, aka Mum and Dad, they started the company actually 23 years ago. Very much involved today. If people call up and speak to us, they'll speak to either myself and most likely Amanda on a day-to-day basis. So we are a family company, and like I say, the company was started 23 years ago, really not intentionally. Me and my brother in our teenage years, we both played rugby in and out of the house. We were very boisterous, and Mum always grew up with metal beds, staying at her grandmother's, and Mum wanted some good quality metal beds for me and my brother. She went to a very well-known high street retailer that was portraying that this product was made in Britain. It wasn't, and I actually broke my bed within a week. I think Jack's lasted a lot longer. Jack was a very careful teenager. And so, long story short, Mum spoke to her farrier. He spoke to his friend who was a blacksmith. He spoke to his friend who was a powder coater and basically said, I've got this lady. She won't leave me alone. She would like 2 beds made. Can we make something? They made something not as beautiful as what we do today. But they started, and he made 2 metal beds, had them powder coated, and then that's when Mum and Dad actually took a step back and said, there's something here, let's see what we can do. And 23 years later, we're the only metal bed maker in the UK certified by Made in Britain, royal warrant holder to the late Queen Elizabeth II, also royal warrant holder to King Charles III. And yeah, we're very different because it's our livelihood. We always refer to it as our legacy. And myself and my brother have taken over really more of the day-to-day running and the direction of the company in the last couple of years. And we always refer to it as Mum and Dad's legacy that we're trying to uphold.
A true family company, and also sort of rooted in the countryside. I love the story of going to the farrier, to the blacksmith, to
Oh my
make
gosh,
that
I would
first
love
bed.
to see my farrier's face if I asked him if he could make me a bed.
Well, I mean, did you notice when I said, he said, I've got this lady and she won't leave me alone. I think if you ever meet Mum is a phenomenal woman, inspirational. In 2025, she won the Inspirational Leader of the Year award from Made in Britain. And we've always grown up, and Mum has always approached business in that there's no such word as can't.
So you've obviously mastered the beds, but tell us about the mattresses.
So mattresses has just been an absolute whirlwind of an experience. One which, when we started going down the road of, we didn't realize where we would end up or continue to be. Making metal beds, selling metal beds for 23 years, people are always going to require a bed. 9 times out of 10, they're going to require a mattress. So we were selling some of the very big, well-known brands. What we wanted to do was start putting our own name on a mattress collection, but we didn't want it just to be any mattress collection. We wanted it to uphold our origins, our ethos. So our beds are made from British iron. We do import. We import our wooden slats, and that's the only element for our bed frames that we import. And so we wanted to echo that into our mattresses. Being on the Sandringham estate, surrounded by a lot of sheep. We're going back kind of like 5 years or so. They had big herds. They had herds of about 4,000 or 5,000. So we were already selling natural fiber mattresses through bigger names. And Mum approached Sandringham Estate and said, well, what do you do with your wool? And the stockman at the time said, well, we send it to British Wool. It's a headache. It's a byproduct. We don't really do anything with it. It just sits there for months. So if you want it, you can have it, but you've got to take all of it. And so in one conversation, we ended up with 6 tons of wool. And so then we partnered with a white label mattress manufacturer. So none of the big names that you would see day to day. You wouldn't walk into a high street retailer and see a mattress made by this company. They specialize in white label, but also making components for other mattress makers in Britain. So we started working with them. We told them what we wanted to do. And we created our very first fully traceable back to the field mattress collection. I want to say 2021, 2022. And that's how we got into doing our own mattresses, because we realized that there was a gap in the market for hyper traceable mattress products. We also saw that the market was being completely flooded and bombarded by memory foam and man-made fibers, which we all know from an environmental point of view were just awful for the planet. So yeah, we wanted to create something that we could sell alongside our bed frames that uphold our ethos to our product and how we approach our product, and that is ethically and sustainably and authentic.
And like you say, Harry, they're 100% British wool. And I really love the traceability system that you have. So every fleece that you process is in farm-specific batches. And am I right in saying that then the mattresses have a QR code so you can actually identify the source farm of that wool that you're sleeping on?
Yes, and that's something we've created in-house. So when we first started the collection, we only worked with Sandringham Estate. So the traceability element was actually quite easy because we only had one farm. But then, unfortunately, over the years, Sandringham have reduced their flock size. We then needed to expand our wool cooperative, as it were. So then we started to go direct to farmers, buy from farms, pay them directly, so not going through any kind of third party. And then that's when we said, well, hang on one second. We've now got 4 farms that we're working with. How are we going to offer that traceability that we had from the beginning? Because we can't let that go. You have other mattress companies out there that say, yes, we use British wool and yes, it's traceable. Well, that's traceable to England, Scotland or Wales. You know, it's very rare that it's traceable back to the bale of wool that it was made from, let alone the farm. So we knew we had to create something special to be able to keep that authenticity and that message to our customers. And so, yeah, we developed the program. So now we scour in smaller batches. Each farm is tagged. That scouring batch is tagged. That bale at the end is tagged. And then we make in small lots. When we don't mass produce, by the way. We're not a mass production company. So it allows us to be able to trace back to the bale, to the farm, by a simple QR code.
And how many farms or farmers are you working with? And then what's the process? You obviously buy it from them, it needs to then be washed. And then how does it get from on the sheep into one of your mattresses?
We're currently working with 5 farms all across the United Kingdom. Currently, right now, we are limited with the farms that we can work with just because there is an element there of economy of scale. So unfortunately, we can't partner with farms that have less than 750 sheep because we need a minimum per farm of a ton of fleece to be able to scour for that traceability. So it's literally a case where we will have a conversation with the farm we'll probably actually start from next month, so April time. April and May, we'll have a conversation with the farm. Are you happy to supply us with wool? Let's agree a price. So we always work with a farm based on the farm's financial requirement. So most of the farms we work with, we say that we will cover the cost of shearing. Depending on the farm, that can range from £1.50 a head to £3 a head. But we normally, rough rule of thumb is we will cover the cost of shearing. And because the farmer knows how many sheep require shearing, we can roughly agree a price even before the fleece has been sheared. So the farmer knows way ahead of cash flow and how they can forecast. So then sheep are sheared. And some farms are happy to hold it for us for 6 months. Some farms say we need it collected ASAP. So we work with the farm again on an individual basis. And then normally payment is a month after collection. And then we take it in, we store it in batches, and then as required, we send it off to the scourers for that minimum processing. And we scour one farm at a time so we can ensure that there's no crossover, so everything is really tailored to the detail and fully traceable.
It's a proper relationship you have with these farmers, and regular listeners to the podcast will know that I'm not the sheep expert of this presenting duo, but Bizza, you will testify to the fact that this relationship's quite unique for sheep farmers, and actually in most cases it's a real challenge to make any sort of financial gain out of shearing sheep, and it's purely for welfare reasons in a lot of cases.
It is, and I've got a small flock of grey-faced Dartmoors, and back in the late 1900s, their wool was used for carpets and curtains, and you'd get a premium for it because they're a long wool breed. And then you had your continental breeds come over and take over, and the Dartmoors, the fleeces are worth nothing, the same as what our commercials are worth. I could take it to somewhere more specialist, but it's the time and it's the faff and it's the travel to get it there, and then you don't get paid for months and months and months. And so I just send it off with the rest of our commercial fleeces. But it's such a shame because it's such amazing wool. So to hear that the likes of you guys, Harry, are developing these relationships with farmers, I think gives a glimmer of hope maybe for the rest of us that we could possibly one day get there, and maybe not even in mattresses, but in something else. And hopefully wool will come back and we'll have a revival of it, because it's a byproduct and a waste product, but it's got so many benefits, whether it's clothes, carpets, curtains, or insulation. That's another big one. My partner's a builder and he looks at using it for insulation, but it's just the faff of it all, isn't it?
That is kind of hitting the nail on the head. It's a faff. And I think where we like to do is we need, as a responsible British manufacturer, if we want to use British raw materials, we have to take the faff out of our supply chain. From an animal welfare point of view, you have to shear sheep. And just as we were starting to launch the first style of mattresses, and there's been several evolutions over the years because we did originally get the recipe wrong. They were very heavy. They were very firm. Delivery team did not like delivering them because they were super heavy. So it's been through an evolution. But we were having questions, saying, I'm a vegetarian. What mattress can I buy from you? Or I'm a vegan, what sort of mattress can I buy from you? I don't like animal products, what sort of mattress can I buy from you? And we kind of said, well, we don't have any because they all contain wool. And then people were saying, well, that's inhumane, that's cruel to the animal. And it's like, hold on, let's just have a conversation about what wool is, And a lot of people that we spoke with who were asking these questions didn't actually realize that wool is a byproduct. It's not an end-of-life product.
It's so diverse, wool, and I think that education piece is really important, and the fact you can create that connection through the mattresses through to the farmer, I think is really important.
So Harry, we're small, I suppose, sheep farmers in comparison to those that you work with. I have 11, 12 grey-faced Dartmoor ewes, so I'm not sure if they would fill a mattress. But we also commercially farm about 450 here. You mentioned that you only work with those over 750. Is that number hoping to change over time, and you'll work with, I suppose, smaller farmers like ourselves? Not that we are small, but yeah, will there be scope to work with those smaller numbers?
100%. I can't say too much about it now, but basically we will be able to partner with farms that have 5 sheep.
So my Dartmoors could make a mattress?
Your Dartmoors.
Oh,
yeah.
My goodness. We need to talk about this.
And to conclude, before we started this interview, I was working out that I think my mattress must now be 8 years old. And we're all told to change them every 7 years, Harry. So do I need a new mattress?
The question I would ask you, so if you came into our show space and you said, oh, my mattress is 7 years old, I need to change it. The question that I'm going to ask you is it still comfortable?
Very.
Why change it? If your mattress is still comfortable, why change it? And I'll give you a little insight into that 7-8 year rule. Didn't exist 20 years ago. The 7-year rule, in my personal opinion, is a way to coach future sales. It's a way to create product with a certain lifespan, because the consumer is, even at the point of purchase, the consumer is preparing for their next purchase. But if something is made of quality and it's made for longevity, if it's still comfortable, then why change it? So it's like our metal bed frames, they all come with a lifetime guarantee, because we are proud in our craftsmanship, our raw materials. So we are happy to say metal bed frame lifetime guarantee because we trust our product. Our mattresses, our signature collection, they have a 20-year guarantee.
Wow.
Because we trust our product. Our bedstead collection, our natural collection have a 10-year guarantee because we trust our product. If you've got something that's just got, a guarantee for 1 year, 5 years, what trust is there from the manufacturer on that product?
Absolutely. So whilst I've still got a comfy mattress, I'm keeping the mattress. And in a few years' time, I need to go and buy a 100% British wool 20-year guarantee mattress, and I'll be set for the future.
Exactly, and we can use these as sheep.
Yes, you can. Who knows? You might have Brenda's and Diane's fleece stuffed into your mattress.
What a perfect system. Well, thank you, Harry, for joining us. It's been a really interesting interview. Great to hear about your business and your connection with British farming. So, yeah, thank you for your time. It was fascinating to hear from Harry. I was particularly interested to learn that I don't need to change my mattress every 7 years. I did get no sleep last night, Bizza, at all. So I'm pretty ready for a lie down now.
Well, I was going to say, if the 7-year rule isn't really a thing, then you're not getting any sleep. There's no point in upgrading your mattress because you're hardly in it anyway.
That's very true. That's very true.
Well, Luke, you are looking a little bit dazed, so I will let you go off for a nap. And thank you to all our guests for joining us. We had a fantastic time hearing about everyone's stories and also the challenges, as we heard with William.
Next episode will be in relation to Great British Beef Week. So we'll be moving from sheep to cows. So make sure you give that a listen with the other presenting duo. All the information will be in the show notes. And thank you very much for all the guests who joined us on today's podcast. And Bizza and I will see you soon.
Bye.